Good Vach. Welcome back. We're going to start our shir tonight. We try to give it on interesting topics. Okay. So the topic today is going to be about... Huh? Yeah. It's going to be... I'm recording, by the way. This is going on YouTube. Anything you say can and will be used against you. As long as the recording can hear you. But it's all good. So the topic today is going to be about the question of wearing a watch on Shabbos. It's a very interesting conversation. Specifically wearing a watch outside on Shabbos. So let's jump right into it, yeah? So I usually slip out the giant Shulchan Aruch, but I have a pocket-sized version also, so it's a lot easier to open up and move over. Let's see here. So, the Shulchan Aruch, Eretz Chaim, the section of Eretz Chaim, Siman Shim Mem Hey, chapter 345, which is the laws of the four domains of Shabbos. So it starts off with this. We're going to start off with the bare bones basics. Arba Rishuyos LaShabbos, there are four domains in regards to Shabbos. Rishus HaYachid is a private domain. Rishus HaRabim is a public domain. V'Karmelis, the one called a Karmelis. Umakim P'tur, and an exempt space. Now, we're not really going to get into the details of what these particular four things are, but we'll leave it at that for now. But there are four different types of domains. Now, in the next chapter, chapter 346, is the laws of kind of touches on the laws of carrying, which are forbidden on Shabbos. So it starts off like this: Min haTorah ein chayav ela b'meitzi u'machnis v'zayrik u'meishit mishus yachid l'shus rabim u'mishus rabim l'shus yachid. Min haTorah, biblically, okay, there are 39 forbidden acts we cannot do on Shabbos. That's ACTS acts, not AXE. In case you were wondering, Min haTorah, there are two domains you cannot transfer an object from one to the other. That is Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaRabim, a private domain to a public domain, and a public domain back to a private domain. Okay, that includes bringing out, bringing in, throwing, passing. These are biblically forbidden. Now the sages came along and they forbade us from doing these similar acts, transferring an object from a karmelis, which is the third type of domain, to a private domain, or to a public domain, or vice versa. Okay. Just briefly, at least, a private domain generally is categorized by it's either an object or a space that has four walls, or four halachic walls, let's call it that, and its minimum size is 4 by 4 tfachim, handbreadths, wide, long, by 10 tfachim tall. Okay, that's why a house is a private domain, because it's much bigger than that. Not because it's my private house. That's not the reason why it's a private domain. A public domain is complicated. It's the specific details of that. It's a public domain. Just leave it at that. A karmelis is anything that does not fall into either of those two categories. So, for example, like an open field, a public park. These are not public domains. They're not private domains either. So the Chachamim, the sages came along and they said you can't carry from this to a public domain or to a private domain or vice versa. This is called a karmelis. A makom p'tur, the exempt space, is basically usually it's the space in a public domain which is above 10 tfachim. Okay, we're not getting into details. Okay, that's number one. So the first type of carrying that is forbidden, whether min haTorah or midrabanan, is from a private domain to a public domain to a private domain, a private domain to a karmelis, or karmelis to a private domain, a public domain to a karmelis, and a karmelis to a private public domain. Okay, that was 6 if I counted correctly. Okay, says halacha beis over here. Min haTorah ein chayav ela b'ma'avir dalet amis b'rishus harabim. V'chachamim asur lahavir arba amis b'karmelis. Okay, so there's actually two types of carrying that are forbidden. both either biblically or rabbinically, but there's two categories, two different types. One is transferring from one domain to another, which we're familiar with, transferring from your house to the street, let's call it simple, or the street to your house. Another type of thing is if you're already outside in the public domain and you have an object in your hand. If a person walks 4 cubits in the public domain with something in their hand or their pocket, they're biblically forbidden to do so. Okay? And rabbinically, you can't walk also in a Carmelis 4 amas with something in your hand or pocket or whatever. So there's carrying from one domain to another, or transferring from one domain to another, and there's also carrying within the public domain or a Carmelis 4 amas or more. It's forbidden. Okay? Fine. Now, we travel along to Shulchan Aruch over here, Siman Shin Aleph. Shin Aleph is the details of the laws of carrying. Not about domains, more about what can be carried, what can't be carried, what's considered carrying, what's not considered carrying. Okay? Interestingly enough, for some reason, the first halacha in this chapter is about running on Shabbos. Okay. Here we go. So, halacha zayin. Yeah? So, Siman Shin Aleph is chapter 301, halacha zayin, halacha 7. It says, Kol hayetze bedover she'enei tachshit ve'enei derech malbush. Anyone who goes out, meaning either they go out from one domain to another, or they walk 4 amas in a public domain or a Carmelis, they go out with something that is not a tachshit, it's not an ornament. And it's not derech malbush, and it's not something that you normally wear as a piece of clothing. And he carried it out the way that one usually carries such a thing out, meaning they did it in a normal fashion, not in an abnormal fashion, whatever this object is. They didn't carry it in their shoe, for example, which is totally abnormal. Chayav, he is obligated. This is something that was forbidden. He wasn't allowed to do it, and now he is obligated for this. Okay. Now, when it comes to the topic of tachshit, an ornament, jewelry, a necklace, or whatever, it's a complicated topic. It's a very big topic. I'm not getting into it. Okay? And there's also a difference between men and women. I'm not getting into that as well. Okay? Because there's a lot of details, and we don't have time, and I didn't have brain space to go into all of it. Okay. But just so you should know that there's idea of something that is a tachshit or a derech malbush, something that's an ornament or a piece of clothing, can have slightly different rules. Okay. So now we get into the topic of tonight, which is a watch. We're going to start off with a pocket watch. Although most people I know, in fact, I think all people I know, don't wear pocket watches. We're going to start off with that at least. So first book we're opening up here is the Mishnah Berurah. Mishnah Berurah is a very important halachic work. What does he say over here? On actually this siman, this chapter 301, Shin Aleph. He writes over here in very small letters. That's actually in the middle of a topic he's talking about. He says, the idea of carrying a motor shois. Moira means something that shows. Shois means time. We call that a clock or a watch. He says in Yiddish, he says urzeger. Bivgadov chutz le'edov, to carry out a watch in one's clothing, otherwise known as a pocket watch, outside of an edov. Everyone holds this as forbidden. You can't call this an ornament. This is not like a piece of clothing. One who carries it out into a public domain has to bring carbon chatas. It's an aveira that he did. He says, he says, even if this pocket watch is not the typical pocket watch you see in old pictures where the guy has a chain coming out of his one pocket or wherever and is going into another pocket, and that's what the pocket watch is. Rather, he has the chain, a golden chain on a necklace, and the pocket watch is at the end of the necklace, and he has that in his pocket. That's also completely forbidden, he says, because the watch is seen as a separate entity from the chain, and it's not considered an ornament. It's a separate thing, and it's fine. Okay, so we see there's probably an issue with carrying a pocket watch in your pocket on Shabbos.
Why a key has to be an integral part of it?
I don't know. That might be actually a slightly different thing. Actually, maybe we'll get to about keys. Keys are slightly related to this. Not about the holes on the keys, but rather about the idea of a key.
Integral to the belt or something.
That's the Mishnah Berurah. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is the abridged Shulchan Aruch. Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, people think, is exactly that. It's an abridged version of the Shulchan Aruch. It's not exactly accurate. It is an abridged version, a short version, and it's more focused on the halachas that are relevant, like on a day-to-day life, and it's easy to digest, really. But it's also, after the Shulchan Aruch was written, there were many later rabbis and sages who got into discussions about how we exactly rule in certain things, which are not necessarily spelled out in the Shulchan Aruch, or there are things that were up to debate, even after they were written in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, he actually rules on a lot of those topics, even if they're not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. So the Shulchan Aruch is an important book to learn. What does he say in Siman Pei Daled, chapter 84, halacha number 2? He says, regarding ornaments, there are things that the Chachamim forbade us to go out with them into a public domain on Shabbos. Let's skip that for a minute. Befrat yesh li zoher. Okay, sorry, a little further. How much more so, one should not go out into the public domain wearing a kli hashois, a pocket watch. Even if it's tied to a golden chain, shehu noisei al tzavari, which he carries on his neck. And it's an ornament. The reason why he's saying golden chain, and the Mishnah Berurah also golden chain, because if it's just a regular metal chain, it's not an ornament. It's not a fancy like jewelry. It's not, which would fall into the category of an ornament of clothing. Here's just a chain. But if it's gold, it has a certain beauty to it. It's certain. It's something that you want to kind of like wear as like prestige, show off. Basically, I was trying to avoid that word, but yeah, that's the best way to say it. Because even if it's tied to a golden chain around your neck, it doesn't help. So here we were talking about a pocket. It's not a pocket watch; it's a necklace watch. That's a problem. It's not good. The reasoning is not suffice to allow you to carry it on Shabbos. Is how much more so if the watch is in your pocket. That for sure ain't lo heter. There's no heter for that. You can't carry out a pocket watch in your pocket on Shabbos. We'll see soon, I think, why that is. One of the reasons given is because you can't give the argument to say that it's an ornament. I'm trying to wear it as something to show off with. It's nice. It's in your pocket, buddy. You're not showing anything off. Nobody sees it. So now we go to the Ksais HaShulchan. Ksais HaShulchan, we've mentioned Ksais HaShulchan before. Rav Avram Chaim Noah. He's a Lubavitcher Rav who lived close to 100 years ago, maybe a little over. I don't know. He wrote an important halacha work on the Alter of Shulchan Aruch, Ksais HaShulchan. What does he write? Okay, so he talks about why it's a problem to wear a pocket watch or a necklace watch on Shabbos. Various reasons, because this watch has two purposes. It's not just an ornament. Okay, it's something that you use to see the time, to know the time. It's something that it has an actual use. And he says, and if I'm not mistaken, he says here. And how do you know that it's mainly for use? Actually, it's not just it's for an ornament and for use. It's actually you use it mainly to tell the time. What's the proof? If it stops working, you don't wear it. Why would you wear it if it doesn't work? So that shows that it's actually you're wearing it not really so much for the beauty of it, rather for the usage of it, the practical usage of it. But he ends up with something very interesting. In our times, there was a new invention that was created. It's a pocket watch that goes in your wrist. Isn't that weird? I'm saying nowadays that is a watch. I'm saying for back in the day, this was a new invention. It's a pocket watch that goes in your wrist. lo shayach hachshash deshalif machvi kimish yochel laharis lechaver hashoyis kimishu lavush b'gabe yad mikomokim os losses b'mifnei shetayim machirim hanal. He says, very interestingly, he says the problem that the necklace watch or the pocket watch had, one of them was that you might take it off of yourself to show it to somebody else. Shalif machvi, it's a halachic concept that you might take it off to show it to someone else. It usually applies to women, that they'll have like a earring or whatever that they'll take off in order to, not an earring's not an example, but whatever. They'll have some sort of piece of jewelry that they'll want to show to their friends, so they'll take it off a ring and they'll carry it in the public domain, which is forbidden. But there is a concern with this pocket watch as well. He says with a wristwatch, that concern falls out the window because you show it, it's on your hand, you don't have to take it off. But he says, still, however, it is still forbidden to go out into the public domain, or any domain, with it on, because of the other reasons that he said earlier, which I'm not going to get into for now. So he says, fairly clearly, that a wristwatch you cannot wear on Shabbos. You can't wear it outside into the street on Shabbos. You might ask me, one second, many people wear a wristwatch out the street on Shabbos, or some people do at least. So there is room to be more lenient. So we have Rav Moshe Feinstein, who was one of the greatest Rabbanim in the last 100 years. So he writes in a letter to a Rabbi Gordon. I'm not sure who he is, but it's from Ches Tishrei Tavshin Yud Zayin. For those who are keeping score at home, wanting to know the source and everything, this is in Igros Moshe, the first Chelek Siman Kuf Yud Aleph. Okay, he says, regarding is it permissible for a man to wear a watch on his hand on Shabbos? Regarding the pocket watches, the ones actually going to your pocket, that's obvious that it's forbidden. Skip me a little bit. He says, he says, when you wear a watch on your hand, literally on your wrist, we're more inclined to say that it's actually considered like a garment. It's like a piece of clothing. Okay? He brings proofs to support this. He reiterates this. Therefore, a watch that you wear on your skin, mamish, on your wrist, it is considered wearing a garment, and it should be allowed, even though the main reason why you're wearing it is for the usage of it. That you want to know what time it is. You're not wearing it as a piece of clothing to protect yourself from the elements or to be tznius or whatever it is. Okay, so the Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says you're allowed to wear a watch on Shabbos outside into the street. It's not considered carrying. It's not a problem. However, he says, however, despite this, for the reasons I gave above, there's no need to if you see somebody wearing a watch on Shabbos, there's no need to say, hey, you can't do that. He says, basically, it's proper for a Torah observant Jew or a Yiddish Shemayim that he should not wear a watch on Shabbos. Not wear a watch on Shabbos. It would be more exciting if I got into the reasons for these things, but short on time. Okay, so now to bring this all down to practical, we have a sefer called Shmiras Shabbos Kol Chasa, which is also a very practical, it's like an encyclopedic work on Hilchos Shabbos. He says it very clearly. This is how he rules, based on all the above information. Very interesting. He says a person is allowed to go out on Shabbos wearing a golden wristwatch. Whether the strap itself is gold or some other material. But if the watch itself is made of gold, it's some fancy, beautiful material, you're allowed to go out with it on Shabbos, provided that if it stops working, you don't take it off. Because you're wearing it to look fancy, or to feel fancy maybe. Then it's considered as a tachshit, it's considered an ornament, and there's no issue with going out with it on Shabbos. What about a regular watch, made of plastic or leather? Avol yad ragil, but a regular watch. Ein lotzis ber l'shus rabim. You cannot go out with it into the public domain. Gamim tamid osizav, even if the strap is made of gold. Because generally, when this watch stops working, you don't wear it. Why would you wear a watch that doesn't work? Now, he adds in a parentheses. Nevertheless, one who is lenient to go out into the public domain wearing a regular wristwatch, not made of gold, no need to stop him from doing so. He has on who to rely. In this case, Moshe Feinstein and others. So from the wording here, it's becoming very clear that wearing a watch on Shabbos, a regular wristwatch out into the street on Shabbos, ideally is not allowed. You shouldn't do it, but one who does it, it is a leniency. It's not recommended, but it can be done. They have on who to rely. But preferably, you should not wear a watch into the street on Shabbos.
Is there a difference between men and women in this regard?
I think so, but I didn't look into that topic because it was getting too confusing for me. But I do think there's a difference. I'm not sure, though. So also a similar sefer called the Piskei Teshuvos. He's a compilation. He brings from a bunch of different sources, and he kind of like brings on the final law. He says over here, regarding the wristwatch, which was introduced in recent generations. There's a reason to be more lenient with it, that you carry it, you wear it on the hand, literally. Uderech is considered wearing like clothing. We find opinions in the Paiskim, the rulers of Jewish law, opposing from one extreme to the other regarding a wristwatch on Shabbos. And it's for sure fitting and proper for any Yerei Shemayim to abstain, to not go out with a wristwatch on Shabbos. He says, but those who are lenient in this, you don't need to yell at them, you don't have to get upset with them. Especially if the whole watch is made of gold. And especially, hands off, especially if the person makes it very clear that they're not wearing it to tell the time, they're wearing it because they feel like it looks nice, and especially if it's not even working. So that is the culmination of that aspect of the halachic side of it. I always try to bring in something from Chassidus or from the Rebbe to sort of connect it with the topic at hand. I couldn't really find much. I do have a book called Learning Something from Everything. And I'm 95% sure that there's a thing in there from the Rebbe about watches. It's about Hashgacha Pratis, everything contains a lesson, and I think it's at the Chabad, which is covered in snow. So I wasn't able to get it. But I did find something sort of related. For this, we need a little bit of an introduction. There's a famous thing. If somebody kills somebody by accident, okay? So back in the day, they had Ir Miklat, the refuge, whatever it's called, city. And this person who killed by accident, they had to run to the city, and they were technically safe there from the Goyal Hadam, from the relative of the one who was killed. So it was a safe haven, a safe zone. So there's a halacha that says that you have to put up a sign by the roads. Just put signs pointing the way to the Ir Miklat, and on the sign it says Miklat Miklat. So it says Miklat Miklat. This way is where the Ir Miklat is. So there's a famous sikh of the Rebbe, one of the earlier volumes of Likutei Sichos, that the job of a Jew is to go out into the street and to just be a sign that says Miklat Miklat, I'm a safe haven for Yidden, come, let's learn Torah, let's do mitzvahs. And this is where you can find safety for your neshama, find a relaxing place to be. It's a famous sikha. Here I find the Rebbe kind of gives almost not the opposite connotation, but the Rebbe adds on top of this in a way that makes it more specific, but it's related to a watch, interestingly. So I'll just read it inside. Yeah, the Rebbe says, Hine al kol parshas drachim haya amud even v'chayetze b'zeh she'olav haya kotzuv miklat. In every crossroads there was a pole or whatever, a stone that said on it miklat. Ha'amud le'diber elazulas. The pole, the sign didn't speak to anybody. Ela b'shah shemishu avra al yad ha'amud v'histakal al roshim olav v'yoda likra l'kol abachis. Rather, anybody who passed by the sign and looked at it, saw what it says on it, and they just knew how to, at the very least, they knew how to read. As I know, they knew exactly which way to go. The dugmos agam beruchnius, and this applies. This example applies as well spiritually. You have a Jew that he'll actually go. He'll travel. He'll go on shlichus. He'll go to travel a place where there's a crossroads. He'll put himself in a place. He'll travel to a place where there's Yidden who are standing at a crossroads. They don't know where to go in their life. Well, they don't know yet where they don't know where to go. They don't know where to go in life. And while he's there, when somebody will come to him and ask him, somebody who at least knows how to read, or more literally knows how to call out and say, please help me. I'll show him the way to the miklat. In other words, yeah, you go out, you open up a Chabad house, you go out somewhere, you park yourself somewhere. And people come by and they're like looking for meaning in life, and they come, they knock on your door and they say, "Hey, Rabbi, hey, Rebbetzin, can you show me how to light Shabbos candles? Can you teach me Torah?" Sure, absolutely. Let me show you where the Eir Miklat is. Come, let's learn Torah. Come, let's put on tefillin. Hoysel amnu mesiras nefesh. Yeah, Taka. This Yid, he had mesiras nefesh. He had self-sacrifice. He's leaving his comfort zone to go out and to go help other Yidden. But he doesn't move. He doesn't budge. This guy. He's like a standing still sign that just says miklat. You want help? You know where to find me. I can help you. As long as you come to me, I can help you. I moved out on shlichus. I opened the Chabad house. I'm ready to help anybody who comes to me. Now, the reason what this is connected with the watch is because literally one line right here. Rebbe says parenthetically. Pam hayu oimrim al used to be they would say about a watch, about a clock. A clock, it moves all day long. It moves, but it doesn't budge. It doesn't move off from its place. Clock sits on the wall, it doesn't move. It's moving all day long, but it doesn't move once for even 1 inch. So it's a similar thing here. He moved out on the shulchas. He moved out. He's moving, but he hasn't moved an ounce, like a centimeter. There it ends off. However, according to Chassidus, a person is not allowed to be in a state of doimim, just sitting still and waiting for people to show up. You have to be a goer. You have to be a living and an energetic and warm person. You can't wait till somebody shows up and turns to you and asks you questions. A person has to be full of energy and excitement. And when you see there's a Jew that is in some place that you're able to help him, you have to run to him and then show him the way to the miklat. So I just find it interesting that a wristwatch, as opposed to a clock sits in one place, doesn't move. But yesh lemar, we can say possibly that this idea is represented by a wristwatch where it moves, but it actually physically moves. It leaves this place where it is. It goes with the person wherever it goes. So I guess it's better to be a wristwatch than a clock on the wall. Clock, it moves, it goes to the right place, but it stays on the wall. A wristwatch, it actually moves, but it moves within itself, but it moves as well. Okay, l'chaim.